Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to discuss about the light of Buddha. Like last time we discussed about the story of a former governor who became a Buddhist monk, and after a while he was so happy because he was free of everything, the responsibilities as the governors. So that's why the Buddha prayed him before the entire communities that this will be wonderful. You have made great stride on the path of enlightenment and self-containment. Uh, so peace and joy that you feel is the peace and joy to which even gods aspire. So that type of peace and joy come because of attachment to the worldly things. On the top of that, there's all kinds of responsibilities that we have here on earth. So regardless of who we are, so every day we wake up to go to school, to work, to take care of other people, and so forth. Those things tie us down, that we would not be free at all. And on the top of that, while we fulfill in our responsibilities, we attach to those surrounding us, the material things, the wealth, and so forth. That's another layers of string that tie us down. So that's why for these governors, he was so happy that he was free of those attachment or responsibilities. Remember, attachment go hand in hand with the responsibilities. If we don't know how to separate them, and that's why without meditation we could not recognize and know how to separate the responsibility and the attachment. For example, as the parents, we have the responsibilities to raise and take care of our children, but definitely because of love, we attach to them, and whichever thing happened to them, we suffer, whether they fail in the class, in school, or at work. But if we just recognize everyone has different karma, we cannot control their own karma. We just support them. Without that understanding, much easier for us to fulfill our responsibilities. In the meantime, we would not be suffer when something wrong with them, something happened to them negatively. So that is the story of that former governors. And move forward, according to the Buddhist record, during the third raining season, the Buddha went back to Nirvana. That's been Bamboo Grove Monastery. That was offered by the King Bimbisara at Magadha Kingdom. So when he went back there, every month was so delightful. And the King Bimbisara went to visit the Buddha probably. So every month was prepared for that rainy season at that monastery, and remember the first rainy season, the Buddha stay at the Sana or the deer park, and the second and third rainy season, the Buddha spent time at that bamboo grove monastery, uh, um, especially before the third rainy season. The Buddha went back to his own kingdom of the Sakya kingdom and stayed there for a while, but he went back to the bamboo grove monastery to stay there for the rainy season. Like I mentioned before, that one reason why the Buddha and his disciple spend time during the rainy season, because there's a time for his disciple come together to do meditation, to remind each other their development, and to support each other spiritually. And all the 9 months, they spread out everywhere to speak the Buddha teaching. So that's one of the reasons why they come together during rainy season. And of course, that kind of tradition is still carry on to this day. And another reason is that, especially in India, during the rainy seasons, many insect, bugs, and so forth are on the street, and due to the kindness and stay away from killing karma. So the Buddha remind the monks not to walk around during the rainy season, because they may step on the bugs or insect. So those are the main reason. But the most important one is to stay back for 3 months so that they can support each other spiritually. They can review the Buddha teaching. They can spend more times for their practice of meditation and so forth. So there is another story before that rainy season, a rainy retreat. One day, when the Buddha walking around the Raja Griha city, so his and Venerable Ananda saw a group of children. They were playing on the street. They make the castle by sand, and so the leaders of that group of children saw the Buddha and Venerable Ananda approaching them from far away. So that leaders were so happy that he used his hand to take the treasure rooms that he built with the sand for that castle. So he's so happy to carry that sand and drank toward the Buddha. And so, because he's so small, so Venerable Ananda lift him up, and somehow he put the sand into the bowl of the Buddha. And at that time, the Buddha pat his head and say that 200 years after I passed away, this boy would be reborn as a universal king. This king would embrace my teachings and support the propagandas of my Dharma throughout the region. His friends would be born as his officers and wives. So later on, more than 300 years after the Buddha passed away, so there was a king, uh, Ashoka, up here in India that became Buddhist supporters. We will talk about his life later on. And again, his life is so significant that affect to Buddhism a lot, especially his 9 delegations uh, overseas to spread the Buddha teaching. We will talk about that later on. So during that year, there was a leaders of another religions. He made a scam with his followers to dig a hole in front of that man, so that they could put the burning coal underneath, and of course they cover the hole with grass, leaves, and branches. So after that, they pretend to invite the Buddha come to their house to receive the offerings of food. So even the Buddha knew their scam, he still accept their invitation, but somehow because of the virtue, so when the Buddha went there with his holy monks, so the hole that has the burning coal turned into a little pond which has the lotus flowers blossoming. And so due to the Buddha wisdom and virtue, those things appear. And during that Renin retreat, there was a man that came to be the Buddha disciple amongst others men. So his name was Mahakassapa. That's different from the 3 brothers Kassapa. So this man, he was born below the Padaya trees. This is suburban of the city Rajagriha. So his family was a wealthy families, and when he was young, he's very intelligent with the whole proper wholesome, and especially somehow his body emits the golden light, and other people say that soon later when he grew up he would become a monk because he has great virtue and blessing. So when he grew up, and parents concerned that he would become a monk. So they would worry about that, and they try to find a match for him. Because somehow he didn't want to get married, but because of the parents pushing and demanding, so reluctantly he said that if you could find any girl that has the golden skin like me, I would take her as my wife. And so later on, somehow uh, his parents sent someone to look for that girl, and they found one girl. Her name is Barbara Kapilani in Vesali, uh, who has the golden skin like him. So later on, they get married. But even after become couples, they like to keep the purity, uh, and throughout the 18 years of living together, they sleep separately uh, because they want to keep purity for themselves. So one night, while they were sleeping, somehow Makishipa saw that there was a poison snake that crawled underneath of his wife uh, bed. Later on, he approached that mm, bed and lit his right hand on her body so that it would not be bitten by the snake. So at that time, uh, his wife wake up and ask what's going on. So Makrishipa point his finger to the poisonous snake that crawled out of the room. And at that moment, both of them sat up and contemplate the impermanence principle of life. So his wife encouraged him to leave the house, whole his life, to seek for the teacher. So one day, while Makisbao walking on the road, and he saw the Buddha, and he recognized on the spot the Buddha was his master, teacher. So he approached to the Buddha and bowed down, and of course he followed the Buddha to the Bamboo Grove Monastery to become a Buddhist monk. So within 8 days after becoming monks, he attained arahantship amongst the Buddha disciple. He was famous in the practice of what you call assist practice, um, and he was considered as the uh, third foremost disciple behind Shariputra and Moggallana. And later on, when the Buddha allowed his aunt to become Buddhist nun, that's why later on asked the Buddha permission to become a nun too. And definitely within a short period of time, she attained arahantship. Later on, we will talk about the life of Marquis Shiba, how he uphold the Buddha teaching, how he convened the first Buddhist council 3 months after the Buddha passing away. And during that time, later on, when the Buddha stay at that bamboo grove monastery, um, uh, there was a man that invite the Buddha and his disciple come to his house to receive the offerings. And there was a man, his name is Siddhartha. He came from Savatthi. And let me share with you the map so that you can recognize the area that where the Buddha taught around India during the Buddha times. Let me share with you the screen here. So you remember that here is the Magadha kingdom and the Raja Gaha capital, the capital of this kingdom. And the Buddha first spent his reigning retreat at the what they call here the deer park, and the second reigning retreat he spent at the Bamboo Grove Monastery in Raja city, and before the third reigning retreat, he went back to Kapilavastu. That's where his kingdom was, and the layman, the later on he would be one of the Buddha great supporter. He came from Savatthi, and he went to visit his mother-in-law in Rajagaha. So where this man, his brother-in-law, that invited Buddha coming to his house to receive the offerings. So when last man, his name is Sudatta, went to Raja Gaham to visit his brother-in-law, and at that time, everyone in the house was so busy to make preparation for making the offerings to the Buddha and the Sangha. So when this man, Sudatta, went to visit his brother-in-law, usually his brother-in-law would greet and took care of him well. But somehow at that times, because everyone was busy to make preparation for the Buddha and his disciple coming to the house and to receive the offerings of food. So somehow his brother-in-law and other people in the house did not pay attention on Sutta anything. So he's so surprised and asked his brother-in-law, "What's going on? Do we have a wedding ceremony or death anniversary, or the king would come to your house or not?" So his brother-in-law said, "No, we won't have the those things. But tomorrow, I have invited Buddha and his disciple for a meal. That's why we here to make preparation uh, for making offerings to the Buddha and his disciple." And at that time, when Sudatta heard the word Buddha, he is so surprised and he was so delightful. Uh, and he asked his brother-in-law, "Does Buddha means one who is awake?" So his brother-in-law said, "Yes, the Buddha is an awakening person. He is a enlightened master. He is wondrous and radiant. Tomorrow you will have a chance to meet this wonderful and holy person." So somehow when Siddhartha heard that explanation, he's so delightful and he's so happy that he wants to know more about um, this enlightened teacher. So his brother-in-law tried to explain how after watching the peaceful monks baking the food in the city, he has gone to hear the Buddha teaching at the bamboo grove monastery, and he became one of Buddha's disciples. And he even built many small huts around inside that monastery for the monks staying during the rainy season. So he had always seen building up a modern city hut in a single day. And so because of the past connection, that's why Siddhartha, he was so joyful when he heard those stories. And he had a great love and respect for the Buddha in his mind. He could not wait until the next noon to meet the Buddha. So he spent a restless night uh, anxiously waiting for the daybreak so that he could go to the monastery to pay respect to the Buddha. So at midnight, 3 times, he arose from his bed to see if it was dawn yet, but each time the sky is still dark, so he could not sleep anymore for the third time, and eventually he got up to walk away from the house. So at that time, it's still dark, cold, and misty. So he passed through the gate of his brother-in-law house. So according to the record, he says when Devas, who was his former friend, appear and encourage him to see the Buddha at that night. So at that time, with that type of encouragement, Siddhartha went straight to the Buddha monastery. And remember, in the past, there was no electricity. When you walk out the field of forest, it's so dark. That's why at first he was so scared to walk through the night in darkness. But because of his former friends, who was Deva, that encouraged him to move forward. So that's why he could have the courage to walk through the darkness to get to the bamboo grove monastery to see the Buddha. At that time, the Buddha knew that he came in. That's why when the Buddha was doing walking meditation, he stopped Siddhartha at the front door of the monastery and say softly, "Siddhartha." So at that moment, Siddhartha recognized the Buddha and put the palm together, eyes bound down. And so later on, the Buddha walked Siddhartha to his hut. Um, and of course, with politeness, Siddhartha asked if the Buddha could sleep well. And after the Buddha replied, the monk, this man, Sudatta, told the Buddha that he so anxious to see the Buddha. He could not wait until the next day to see him. That's why he could not sleep well. And he has courage to see the Buddha here at night, at midnight. So later on, hearing Sutta explanation with his sincere mind, the Buddha explained to Sudatta the Four Truths, Eightfold Paths, and so forth, so that he could understand some basic teaching. So at that time, Sudatta was so delightful and happy, and asked the Buddha permission to become his lay disciple. And so the Buddha accepted him. And so after that, Sudatta also invited the Buddha and all monks coming to have a meal in the following days at his brother-in-law home. So the Buddha say that I and the followers have already accept the invitation tomorrow. There's no reason for me to accept again. And so Sudatta can say that, okay, if that's the case, you can go there to receive the offerings with your disciple tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, please come again. This is my times to make offerings to you. So the Buddha kindly accept Sudatta's invitation. So overjoyed, Sudatta bowed the Buddha again, and then quickly returned to his brother-in-law house to help him make the preparation for the day meal offerings. So again, the next day, when the Buddha and his disciple went to his brother-in-law's house to accept the offerings, he also gave the teaching to everyone over there, and especially Sudatta. He was so delightful of listening to the teachings, and his happiness has no boundary. He's so happy, he's so delightful. And after the Buddha finished the eating and the teaching, so Sudatta accompanied the Buddha and his disciple going back to the monastery. And after that, he went back to his brother-in-law to prepare for the next day meal offerings. But his brother say, you're still my guest. Why don't you let me take care of all preparation? But Sudatta say that because I have invited the Buddha already. This is my responsibility to make preparation for the Buddha and his disciple to come back here to receive the offerings. So again, the next day, the Buddha came together with his disciple to accept the meal offerings, and after that, the Buddha gave the teaching too. But after listening to the Buddha teaching, Sudatta he kneel down and request the Buddha to go into Kosala to give the teaching. So the Buddha agreed and accept his invitation, and he is so happy that he would make preparation to go back to his country in hometown to make that kind of preparation. And let me show you one more times where the Kosala is. This is from here. Here. So here Raja Graha in Magadha kingdom. And so Sudatta, he need to walk back to his country here, Kosala. This is around 450 kilometers long. So later on, after that type of invitation that has been accepted by the Buddha, so Sudatta went back to his country and hometown with Venerable Sariputra by foot, because as a monk, they have to walk by foot in the palace. And wherever Venerable Sariputra went, Sudatta followed him. So at first, they crossed Brahmi River and traveled to Vesali. So that's where they met the lady Ambapali that we learned her story before. She was a public dancer, prostitute, but because of her sincere mind, she invited the Buddhas and his disciple to come and accept her offerings. So at that time, when Venerable Sariputra and that time when to the resident of Pali, they stayed overnight over there, and after that they passes to Vesali and Kosala, and of course wherever they went, Sudatta would make announcement that few months from now, the Buddha would come to teach the people in the area. So after that, they after living Pali resident, they head northwest along the bank of the Ajiravati River. So eventually they got to Kosala, and we know that in the past Kosala was one of the most prosperous kingdom, and no less powerful than Magadha kingdom. So at that time, Sudatta went back to his hometown to make preparation for the Buddha and his disciple coming, and it took them, Sudatta and Venerable Sariputra, almost a month to get there by foot. And remember, in the past, they either rode on the ox or cow's cart. They would not have any transportation like the cars, airplanes, and so forth. So when they got there, Sudatta made preparation for Venerable Sariputra to stay in a hut that nearby the city, nearby his town too. And Sudatta usually invite Venerable Sariputra to come to his home for receiving the meal offerings. And definitely he would ask Venerable Sariputra to speak Dharma or Buddha teaching to his family members, including his parents, wife, children, and so forth. Um, so uh, at that time, to make preparation for the Buddha and his disciple coming to his hometown, Kosala, to teach. Sudada went around to search for the suitable place that could host the Buddha and his disciple, but he could not find any place except the place that belonged to the Prince Jeda. Uh, that's so beautiful and peaceful than any park around his hometown, his country. So somehow he felt that Sudada felt that if he could acquire this park, it would serve perfectly the place for the Buddhas and his disciple to stay and spread the teaching in this kingdom. So he went to see Prince Jeda and talk to him about his proposal that he want to buy the Prince Park garden. And so at that time, Prince Jeda was only 20 years old. This gardens and park was given by his father, the king Nadi. Uh, because this prince so young, so he said that my father's gave me the park. And I love this park, and there's no way for me to sell this park, but unless you agree with me to cover every inches of this park with golden coins. At first, the prince thought that this was joking. He could not imagine that someone uh, put down the golden coins in every inches of his park to buy his properties. Somehow, to his surprise, Sudada said that, wow, if that's the case, I really appreciate it. I will pay this part with that price like you just mentioned. Tomorrow, I will bring the coins here and lie down on the ground as the way I purchased this part. So at that time, the Prince Jedi, he was so surprised, and he said, "Well, sorry, I was only joking. I do not want to sell my park. Don't bother to bring any gold here." So at that time, Sudada responded with the firmness that, you know, you are the prince now. Uh, you are the member of royal families. You must carry out the words that you have spoken, because sooner or later you would become a king. And whichever you say, this will impact on other people. So again, you have promised me that you will to sell this park if I light out the golden coins in every inches of this park. So if you uphold that kind of promise, I will appreciate that. Again, it'll be honor for me to buy this park from you. Please uphold that promise as a prince. At that time, uh, the prince could not say anything more, and he said, "Well, if that case, I have to accept them." Uh, so uh, um, even the prince accept Sudada, proposal, but he wished that Siddhartha would not have enough money or golden coin to cover the garden or the park. But somehow with his determination, Siddhartha went back to his town, and next morning he sent a red cart of gold coins, and that his servants would spread them over the entire park. So since the time is up, let me stop here today, and next time we can discuss about this story. Nam mô Shakyamuni Buddha.